just how successful has industrial action been over the past 100 years.
For 9 days in 1926, more than 1.5 million workers went on strike from a range of different industries.
This was in support of the coal miners who were fighting for better pay and working conditions.
It was eventually called off by the Trades Union Congress, the TUC, with the miners forced to accept the new terms.
New laws were later introduced to make general strikes and so-called sympathetic strikes illegal. Almost 50 years later, the miners went on strike once again, but this time they were more successful. The National Union of Mine Workers called for a strike at the start of 1972, and this was over pay.
Coal mines were shut down, causing power cuts. The government even introduced a 3-day week to save electricity. The miners did end up getting a pay rise of 27%.
But high inflation eventually wiped out these gains, and the miners felt they had no choice but to strike once again.
The strikes led to a defeat in the 1974 election for the Edward Heath government. The Labour Party eventually took control, with new PM Harold Wilson increasing miners' wages by almost a third.
The strikes in the winter of 1978 and 79 are some of the most notable and consequential in British history.
Disputes over pay led to mass walkouts, with empty shelves in the supermarkets, a fuel shortage and rubbish on the streets. The strikes themselves were largely successful, with many industries getting pay rises.
But they crucially lost public support, as did the Labour government of the time.
Margaret Thatcher swept to power in May 1979. She introduced major restrictions on union power. In the 1980s, the miners went on strike over plans to close 20 pits, something that would have led to 20,000 jobs being lost. At the peak, 142,000 miners went on strike, with the year-long dispute being dominated by violent clashes. The Thatcher government refused to budge, and eventually the miners returned to work with no deal, and the pits still closed.
These strikes are wrong. For you, for the people you serve, for the good of the country. It's the changes we propose that are right.
Around 2 million public sector workers went on strike over the coalition government's changes to pensions. It led to 60% of schools closing and thousands of cancelled hospital operations.
It never really gained public support. When the strikes came to an end, there was no real change to the legislation. And then the Conservatives in 2015 introduced tougher anti-strike legislation. The unions are not as strong as they once were. They now have fewer members, less impact on working days lost, and also they're having to contend with even tougher anti-strike legislation.
Today, nurses, teachers, railway staff and many more sectors are taking industrial action as the cost of living crisis continues. Some industries have voted to stop their industrial action after accepting pay rises.
But with negotiations between the unions and the government still ongoing, this new era of mass industrial action could go well into 2023.